A goatee, Pixie cut, and two bearded brothers talk UFOs, mind control, and other strangeness. With special guest Micah and William of the Band of Bearded Brothers podcast. Episode 15 of the Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast. Welcome to the Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast. Coming to you from the glacial dumping grounds known as the Michigan Basin. I'm Michelle.
And I am Wayne.
And we are a Michigan-based husband and wife educator and podcasting duo that after having a UFO sighting in March of 2018, have started to examine UFOs and other paranormal topics within Michigan and beyond.
Topics include UFOs, the paranormal, conspiracy theories, ghosts, alternative history and archaeology, cryptids, and all things strange and paranormal. So sit back, grab a drink, and come along with us on this journey down the paranormal rabbit hole. Hey everybody, we're back. What's going on?
Hello everyone.
It's been a little bit since we've recorded an episode, considering how we are all back in school with all the lovely kids.
Yeah, 4 weeks in, and it feels like May.
Yeah, we're ready for our summer break already. That's for sure, because nobody remembers how to behave in a classroom.
I was going to say, teachers out there all have calendars where they're crossing off the days right now.
Yeah, we're definitely counting down the days where we are ready to go. And speaking about being ready to go, people have been sharing our podcast everywhere, and a lot of people have been showing up and joining the community. It's been great. I was
gonna say, we love our Facebook peeps, and there's lots of you that are joining the group.
Yes, we continue to grow as the podcast gets more and more downloads, and now we are listened to in over 65 countries. So you guys are all massive legends. So huge thank you to everybody for helping out.
We do. We love the stories. We love the banter, the videos. So just remember, if you have a story you would like to tell, we would like to talk to you. You can reach out to us at mi.ufo.podcast@gmail.com. Send us a brief summary of your experience and we'll contact you to discuss things further and try to get you or your story on the podcast.
Yes, and also if you want to help support the podcast, you can do so by checking out our merchandise store.
It's got its own domain now.
It does. It's miufopodcaststore.online. So very simple to remember, but this will also be put in the show notes. Same swag store, just a much cooler
T-shirts
URL.
T-shirts to tote bags. Nothing like rocking something that has an alien on the front.
Absolutely. All right, Michelle, this show tonight,
it
gets a little crazy.
It does get crazy, but it was a fun conversation with those two.
Right. We have Micah and William from the Band of Bearded Brothers podcast on tonight. So I will admit I was a bit fired up during this conversation, especially when we got onto mind control and cell phones and how they're manipulating kids.
Well, there was definitely a lot of topics that we talked about that could get anyone fired up.
Yeah. So, all right, Michelle, I think it's that time.
It is time for What's in the News.
Yes. What is in the news?
So, hitting some cyber news here, there's lots of talk about UAPs and the investigation going to Congress. And so there is an article out within the internet just September 23rd, so quite recently, that the fiscal year 2022, the NDAA provision would create permanent UFO office at the Department of Defense.
Mm-hmm.
So the fiscal year 2022 National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, will be brought to the House floor for continued consideration and an eventual vote this afternoon, according to Majority Speaker Steny Hoyer. A lesser-known provision of the bill would create a new office at the Department of Defense dedicated to studying unidentified aerial phenomena.
And I do believe Marco Rubio is his counterpart in this this committee or whatever, and he also was signing on that, but it doesn't mention that here.
Well, it's interesting that after the report that came out in June, that now they're looking at even a further study.
Well, they released the report, the big report, to the committee, and then they went on recess. They come back from recess, and this is one of the first amendments that they want to add to the NDAA.
So it says federal officials have previously pointed at emerging tech as a key to unraveling these mysteries, and this office would look to do just that. The Pentagon has been studying its handling of UAP sightings, otherwise known as unidentified flying objects. This year, and looking at the work of the UAP task force established last August. This provision would have the Secretary of Defense work with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence to expand the work of the task force department-wide within 180 days of the enactment of the NDAA, according to the bill's text. A preliminary assessment by the ODNI confirmed more than 140 UAP sightings, 80 of which were captured by multiple sensors. And, this is something that we even talked about with the guys tonight.
That's right.
As far as the one being the deflated balloon, and then the other one's just kind of like, don't know what they are.
Yeah, but also notice here that it says 140 UAP sightings, but 80 of those were actually captured on multiple sensors, which that means that's the kind of stuff they're going to focus on because they have actual data from radar, sonar. Of course, they don't tell us that. They just say multiple sensors.
Yeah, it's not a single, tunnel vision. Now they've got all the other aspects that they can look at it. And when we think about 140, we know that this is a very short time period that they're even looking at these as well. So,
and this UAP task force, that's that A-tip that Luis Elizondo was the head of.
Yeah.
That broke the stories on the Tic Tac and everything. Kind of the whistleblower, if you will.
So the purpose of the office would be to develop ways to standardize the collection, reporting, and analysis of UFO sightings by the Department of Defense, as well as develop ways to make sure reports from different military departments are collected in a central database. Not prepared to simply chalk up such sightings to aliens, the office would also be tasked with evaluating any links between UAPs and adversaries, other foreign governments, or non-state actors. The office would then look to determine what sort of threats the UAPs pose to the nation. The office would also look to collaborate with other federal agencies and allies on the issue. The bill would require annual reporting from the office to Congress from 2022 through 2026, with the first report due by December 31st, 2022. In addition to the number of reported sightings for the year and analysis of them, the report would need to analyze what threats UAPs pose to the nation, whether any sightings have been linked to adversaries, updates on any coordination with allies, updates on efforts to capture and exploit any discovered UAPs, and more.
Man, they've already been doing that. Come on. They've already captured and exploited a bunch of discovered UAPs. They're just not telling us. And now we got to wait till December 31st of 2022.
Yeah, so here's
for this first report. Come on.
It's the dangling of that carrot right in front, just like they did with the report in June.
They want to show us that they think that they're doing something, but really, Oh,
they obviously have the money for it. So the bill's enactment, the bill's enactment, if this provision holds intact, would signal the end of the UAP task force and the beginning of this office picking up its work on the issue.
Yes. Let's just change names of things and move things around. A UFO is no longer a UFO, it's a UAP because, well, they probably had a marketing group come in and say, UAP sounds better than UFO. You guys have stigmatized, along with your buddies in the media, you guys have stigmatized the UFO acronym. You need to change it so it gives it legitimacy, so it looks like you're doing something. So
UAP is the politically correct name for a UFO.
Yeah, I'm a little cynical, especially with the stories and the people we've talked to and the issues that have gone on with these things, and this is the best we're going to get. But anyways, we got a second story here, and it's a short one. And this was sent to us by one of our Facebook members and a listener of the podcast. And this one is kind of a funny one, yet kind of a serious one. I don't know if this is maybe a setup or what, but the links will be in the show notes for both of these articles. This one's called TikToker Films Secret Stealth Drone at Skunk Works Base. A short TikTok video is buzzing on open source intelligence outlets, which appears to show some sort of secret American advanced stealth unmanned aerial vehicle, or a UAV, being towed on a flatbed trailer, and further analysis has identified the location and likely explanation of the 7-second video clip. Ruben Hoffs, an OSINT themed Twitter account, used terrain association to geolocate the source of the video to Lockheed Martin's Helendale Radar Cross-Section RCS measurement facility, a longtime stealth aircraft testing facility in California's Mojave Desert. Once Helendale was pinned as the source location of the video, further logical analysis suggested that the airframe shown in the video was likely a mere quote-unquote test shape and not an actual viable aircraft. The Helendale facility uses various radar frequencies against the test shapes to determine an airframe's stealthiness. Well, I can tell you one thing. I bet you I know one contractor that is either fired, paying a lot of fines, sitting in prison, or has been disappeared.
I was going to say, for folks out there, I mean, it is something really cool to look at, because I can imagine if it pivots or tilts a certain way, it probably, that's how it goes invisible.
Yeah.
So by the shape of it.
Yeah, plus those are like radar absorbing materials that they usually put on the outsides of those things, like the stealth fighter and stealth bomber. So not only are they very low profile, especially if they're flying toward a radar, any radar waves that hit them give off a very weak return and usually don't make it back with a strong enough signal to the radar receiver to be detected. Now, if they start banking and things, that's different. They increase their profile, but that's...
Yeah, so much for secrecy. There's one guy out there being told you had one job.
Well, yeah, exactly.
You had one job.
Honestly, why would they, if this was so top secret, why would they put it on the back of a flatbed trailer in the middle of the day and move it across the parking lot where there is contractors working?
Oh, why do people do a lot of things? So this is definitely one of those cases.
Good question. And then the story goes on to say, while this may not be an actual secret U.S. military aircraft, Lockheed Martin probably didn't want images of it trending on the internet. The video was seemingly filmed by a third-party construction contractor who's disappeared. No, I don't know that. More than likely signed a non-disclosure agreement before being allowed to work inside the facility. After publishing the video on TikTok, he may have received a visit from the Men in Black. Oh boy. So there we go. So here we got a story and stuff, and then let's just discredit everything with the Men in Black little jab.
Well, I'm sure whoever that construction contractor was, maybe a vehicle showed up.
Maybe, like I said,
tinted windows.
There's a contractor company that just put out an ad on Indeed looking for a new worker because somebody disappeared.
Suits. It's the suits.
All right, Michelle, that's enough of the news for today. Why don't we get into some shout outs?
Oh, we do have some shout outs. First one going out to Cosmographia, the Randall Carlson podcast. It is their mission to investigate and document the catastrophic history of the world and the evidence for advanced knowledge in earlier cultures. You will also learn of the profound effect it has on human civilization, both past and future, its relevance to Earth herself, and how to successfully cope with the inevitable changes that are sure to visit our dynamic geocosmic system.
And then we're going to jump over to the UFO Garage. The UFO Garage is a podcast about UFOs, aliens, and all things weird. The UFO Garage podcast is a fun, laid-back approach to the UFO, UAP alien phenomenon. We love chatting with interesting people, hearing strange stories, and having a beer or two. Hosted by Joe and Ben. They are dudes. You're a dude. He's a dude. She's a dude. We're all dudes. Yeah. And that's kind of the feel of that podcast. I just discovered them and thought they were pretty funny and just very, very cool.
Oh, they are entertaining. It is. It's like watching Cheech and Chong of
absolutely
the UAP world.
Yeah, but they get some great guests on there.
They do. They sure do.
So give them a listen. Check them out.
So next we have the Lost in the Dark podcast hosted by Burton and Aaron. This is a pretty cool podcast that bills itself as an attempt to capture incredible conversations between best friends as we explore all of our passions, but especially music and the world of heavy metal. So if you're into paranormal investigations and loud heavy metal music, give them a listen. Strong language, but it's heavy metal and paranormal. What else would you expect?
And last but not least, we're going to go across the pond to the UK and give a shout out to Phenomenon magazine yet again, the world's most recognized e-zine of its kind. The magazine investigates the whole realm of the strange, profound, unknown, and unexplained. They delve into the paranormal, UFOs, cryptids, parapsychological, and 14 events. The magazine can be downloaded every month for free in PDF format. Check the show notes for a link to the magazine. We will also be featured in an upcoming issue of the e-zine, so stay tuned for more. And we do have an ad running in there, so it's awesome that they are promoting the podcast in their magazine. That's great. So thank you very much, guys, at Phenomenon Magazine. All right, Michelle, why don't you tell people a little bit about who we have coming on the show tonight?
Well, we've got the band of Bearded Brothers. A little bit about the guys. We are just two brothers with beards who enjoy good conversation, coffee, and debating the great mysteries of the world. This includes, but is not limited to, politics, aliens, reality, human control, and manipulation through many outlets. Are you sure your reality is real? Are you sure what you believe to be truth is true? Will we be a multi-planet species soon? Will AI rule the world in the next 10 years? Will we be able to live through our consciousness being downloaded for hundreds of years to come? Are we already part cyborgs and unaware?
That's cool.
That is cool.
What a great concept, and I can't wait. Let's go ahead and dive into this interview with Micah and William from B.O.B.B. or B.O.B.B, the band of Bearded Brothers. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined tonight by two Michigan podcasters. We got Micah and Will from the band of Bearded Brothers. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, glad to have you guys on board. Happened to discover you guys not too long ago and started listening. And I think the first thing I found was Will with Christina Gomez, along with Jimmy Church.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is going to be good. I got to sit back and see what's going on. And that was amazing. That was kind of my first exposure. And now I've been going through Christina Gomez's stuff like crazy, your guys' stuff like crazy. And it's just been a crazy ride. It's been a lot of fun. So why don't you guys tell our audience a little bit about who you guys are And what got you into doing something like this?
Sure thing. Mike, you want to go first then?
Well, mine's going to be really, really short and sweet. So I guess for me, I enjoy talking about. I'm more of a political person. That's kind of my wheelhouse. And I like to look at things in a very logical aspect. So my role in our podcast is really to kind of reel William in and kind of tone down a little bit of what he comes at me with. So the biggest reason why I got involved, 100% honest, was William was like, you know what, I'm going to go buy $3,000 worth of equipment and I'm going to start a podcast and I want you to do it with me. So, at that point I was like, you know what, I got nothing to lose here.
You got drafted.
Yeah. It was kind of a tag along for it. I mean, I enjoy it. It's something I can't always make time for, unfortunately. I've been working a lot as of late, so it's between trying to have family time and work is kind of, it's difficult to kind of fit in, but I try to make do. But I'm sure William will have a much more fantastical story as to getting involved in podcasts.
Awesome.
No, not really. I mean, I had heard of podcasting and I didn't really know what it was. Honestly, what hooked me in was, well, you guys are from Michigan. You may or may not know them. Do you know the radio show Dave and Chuck the Freak?
Yes,
absolutely.
Okay, so being in the trades and working every morning, I'd listen to those guys, and and then I knew when they were ending, okay, we're getting close to lunch or whatever. So that was my initial, I guess, introduction, because the problem is I'm working in trade, so it's loud. You can't always just be standing by a radio. So I was like, man, they got to be somewhere. Like, there's got to be so I can just like listen to the old episodes. And I downloaded iHeartRadio, and I found them initially, and I was listening to them for a while, and then they had an episode that was dealing with I think it was when the Tic Tac incident had come out. Right?
Okay. The Nimitz encounter.
Yeah. And I was like, that's interesting. And I'd always been intrigued, even though I wasn't outspoken about it, I was always intrigued by the idea of, there being other beings. And I don't want to speak for Micah necessarily, but we were raised in a pretty religious household, far as that was kind of a taboo subject. I mean, if it was, if it was an alien, that it was just an unidentified, object, they were like, well, that's just an angel, or perhaps some sort of a bad thing, like say a cryptid encounter, which, well, that's just a demon. You know what I mean? It was just angels or demons. Those were like our only two options, I feel like.
Right.
And so from that, I just typed in one day, I was like, all right, UFO. I just typed in UFO, and the UFO Garage podcast came up, and started listening to them. And they were a lot of fun, and they were making me laugh, but also bringing out some information. I was like, that's a good point. And they actually inspired me, and I've always told them they were the reason I got started. And then obviously like Joe Rogan and stuff. Yeah. Which Joe, we're still waiting to hear back. I don't know. I guess the guy's got a show he's doing or something. So
yeah, he's a little busy.
He's a little busy. So yeah, Mike is absolutely right. I tend to get too carried away with things. One could say I jump a little full force into things. And then what's the old saying? What is it? Oh, something rewards the brave. Or how does that go? What's the saying on that? Fortune
rewards the foolish, or
it could be the foolish.
Right? Yeah,
it could be. I can't remember the saying. Something like
that. So basically, if you're willing to take a risk, you could come out positive, or you could come out negative. But
absolutely. And I would say the negative aspect, if there's one, right, Mike is absolutely right. I spent like a lot of money on stuff we didn't even need. Like we've helped people now get started. We're like, listen, you guys only need a couple $100 tops, and you sound amazing. Matter of fact, now they're getting so good with it. I really tell people $100 and under, and you can have a whole platform and everything. So
absolutely.
Anyways, that's what our show. I was like, Micah, I'm into this kind of stuff, but I knew he had a lot of knowledge in the political aspect of it. And you and I have chatted about this recently. You're saying that it's very hard to cover the UAP or the UFO, whatever term you want to use, and how I love how they keep changing it, terminology, without bringing in the government entities and three other agencies. So I was interested in his aspect on that too. Like he brought up the point of keeping, I knew I could get carried away. So I was like, we need someone who's balanced in this and is going to be that, is going to challenge me on episodes where I'm like, they're everywhere, and all this stuff. So I was like, let's come and hang out. And we've done political ones. And I definitely learned a lot from him that way and started to understand economics a lot more than I did prior to that. And I think I could be wrong, but I think I'm starting to win him over with the, at least being open to the possibility of there being some other crafts out there. So that's kind of the mission statement of our whole podcast, is that we're a podcast for humans dealing with human control and manipulation, essentially, through mainstream media. And that rolls into everything, not just political. I'm talking about this kind of stuff, talking about the fact that the world is much more amazing than we realize. So that's it in a nutshell. We just love open conversation. We're both huge supporters of the First Amendment, obviously, and freedom of speech. So that was another thing that was really changing at the time. And we just felt that this was an avenue that we could still we got in the game at a bad time, I guess. Really, we got in the game when a lot of things were starting to be censored a little more, but it's been a blast. And we've encountered so many great people that are doing it as well, yourselves included. So it's just amazing to me that like every other week I seem to be finding another podcast that becomes a new favorite of mine. So
the rabbit hole of podcasts.
Yeah.
So true. You got to find a lot of things to do around your house so you can listen to all the podcasts that you're finding.
Say the peeps are talking. I looked it up for you. It's the Roman poet Virgil that said, "Fortune favors the bold."
There you go.
Polish. The bold.
Yeah, I thought there was a version.
Ways, though.
Yeah, right,
yeah.
Right. Hey,
depending on how bold you are, you could end up looking a little foolish.
100%.
All right. So another question. So we kind of find ourselves a lot of the times interviewing other podcasters and talking about your experiences and things like that. So what other podcasts? You had mentioned UFO Garage, and I just found those guys as well because, Will, I think you were doing a show for them on the weekends or something like that. So what other things are you involved in, and Micah as well? Is there any other things?
He is involved in way too many.
Yeah. You start having fun. I mean, and you start learning. That's what I like about it, because my wife and I came into this and we are neophytes in the way of UFOs and paranormal stuff until what happened to us, which was ridiculous. But Micah, go ahead. Or I'm sorry, Will.
Oh, yeah. So, definitely. If anybody wants, I definitely recommend checking out the UFO Garage podcast. I mean, they brand themselves as that they're into UFOs, aliens, and all things weird. And they're just a couple of dudes. And I don't think they take any offense to me saying that. I mean, that's what they're about. They come off as that very Cheech and Chong kind of vibe to them. But they have some of the most amazing guests in this little group of people, I guess you could say, or in this community, that reach out to them simply because the community had gotten so divisive in some ways and very separated. And we had the newer generation coming in, some of the older generation, and it was this weird conflict, which is some of, like you mentioned, Christina, that's some of what she's been dealing with, and we're trying to bridge that gap. And they're just a fun podcast, and they don't just deal with UFOs, but generally speaking, it's almost always related something to a UFO,
right?
But also from them, mainly, this is where all the other podcasts that we deal with we've met. There's a group called What If Tomorrow podcast, and they're in Kansas City, and their main thing is they're all about preparedness, just anything. And it doesn't have to be the idea of the government and stuff like that. They're in the idea of like, it could be a solar flare, it could be a tornado, where they live, that's stuff they deal with.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for them. And they're he's a former Marine himself, so he's a very military kind of concept. They both work in avionics, and they've had some experiences, so their understanding of seeing what a flight, knowing what we can do and what we've been taught about avionics and physics, and then seeing something, as you guys have experienced yourself, defy the laws of what we understand. It's a very unnerving thing. So those are two groups that we've stayed really tight with. And other than that, man, you go down a rabbit hole. There's a Cryptonaut podcast. They're all about cryptids. You start finding all these different groups. They're like, they have their niche. They're just this one thing. And Mike and I have talked about this before. I don't know that we have a niche. I don't know, Mike, do you feel we have a niche on something? I don't really think we do.
No, I don't think we do. We're all over the map. So it's, we could talk about secret government projects one episode, and then we can go into Bigfoot in the very next one. And Then we go back to true crime, basically. So it's no, I don't think we really have a groove we've settled in yet.
No.
No, I was going to say that's pretty much us too, because we've gone from, the UFO sightings in Michigan when we first started talking about the 1966 Ann Arbor, Hillsdale area, and then a few episodes later we're talking about high technology in Egypt. So, and making jokes about copper chisels.
Right. Having Johanna James on and Ben,
that was amazing,
from Uncharted X, and for me, I really enjoy that stuff because as a Earth and space science teacher, the stuff that I was taught in college about the ending of the last ice age just made no sense to me. That humans killed 180 some species of megafauna, things that would eat your face off, in a heartbeat. Saber-toothed tigers, mastodons, you name it, the short-faced bear, these animals, the terror bird that was running around, and they were designed to shred people. I mean, crazy, stuff. And the explanation was, well, they all got killed in a flood, or, humans hunted them all, or maybe they got sick, or it got really cold. Well, that's not a good explanation for my $60,000 of college debt to get a degree so I can teach
they got
this
the
stuff.
Flu.
Yeah.
They got the coof.
They got the coof. They didn't get the jab, so all these animals got the coof. But it's not, it didn't make sense to me. And so all these years went by, and I just kind of put it in the back of my head, and then I happened to be checking out this Joe Rogan podcast thing, and there is my God on the podcast. It's Randall Carlson. I'm like, whoa, hold on. This dude is saying what? And he pulled out so much information in one of his episodes with Joe Rogan. I was like, holy crap. This is what I was looking for. This is what makes sense to me. That, okay, yeah, there was all this melted water north, and these amazing ice dams were created, and then they just finally broke. Really? No. Okay. No, that makes no sense. An ice dam. And then you have this. Where's the energy that melted all of this? I mean, being Michigan boys, we were underneath 3 miles of ice here.
Yeah.
Easily. That's why we get earthquakes here, because the crust here is pushed down into the softer layers of the upper mantle, and now it's rebounding back. It's called isostatic rebound. And that's why we get these little weird earthquakes here, even though we're not on any faults. And it's like, this is an explanation. This makes sense. Not, people running around, as Brothers of the Serpent would say, in butt flaps, right? In loincloths and addle-addles, killing huge mastodons by the troves.
Yeah.
Right. By the troves. Because, that's what they did. No, hunters didn't kill off all of their food. I mean, it was crazy. And, then he started getting more into, well, this is how it could feed into that idea of Atlantis. I'm like, the oceans rose by 400 feet in the matter of days when all that ice melted. And it's an impact. There was an impact or multiple impacts of a broken up comet that struck the northern ice sheets. And that makes sense, especially with all the evidence out there. That you have this evidence that shows that there was some type of an impact, some massive burning that happened on the planet, and this huge rush of water. And I don't know, but 150 some religions that all talk about some kind of a biblical flood. How many witnesses do you need to convict somebody of stealing? I mean,
one, right?
Right. So how many witnesses writing a book talking about their religion, even though it's guised in a religion, but talking about history of their ancestors surviving a flood? I mean, so anyways, that spiraled me down the rabbit hole, and then Graham Hancock and, awesome stuff. So I don't know. And I treat my wife like Will treats Micah. I kind of hooked her in and said, hey, you got a background in theater and speech and you know how to write. I'm a scientist. I don't do well with that. So come along.
He knows I just typically like to talk.
Well, there is that. So that was when I started getting into this stuff. And then we had our encounter, which was, ridiculous in 2018.
You should tell, especially if we're going to end up sharing this a couple weeks after you guys were, because our audience wouldn't know anything about that. Micah doesn't. Yeah. So, you can at least, I know everybody out here's, obviously we've heard it, but he hasn't and they haven't. So I'm sure they'd be curious.
Oh, yeah. We should tell the audience, by the way, that this is going to be what we're calling a swap cast, where once we release our episode there, Will and Micah are going to also release this same episode on their feed as well. So this is going to go out, throughout a couple feeds, which will be very cool. Michelle, why don't you kind of
we lead off the night where we were playing late night bingo.
You guys were partying hard.
We were partying really hard.
We were giving those old ladies a run for their church money. Let me tell you.
Well, it wasn't at a church, but we had left there. God, what was it? It was about 2:30 in the morning on Ford Road. Wow. Heading west.
That's the late night. That's the hardcore people.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the serious bingo players right there.
Yeah, that's how many cups of coffee can you drink to stay awake and not fall asleep in the car on the way home. Yeah. So, but we were wide awake and we were driving on Ford Road in the Jeep. And you could see like an object down just past 275, just south of the IKEA building. And as we got closer, I'm looking at it and I look at Wayne. I go, when did our military get that?
And I'm looking at it going.
And it was this triangular shape. And I'm like,
it was huge.
Is it a drone? That can't be a drone. It's like, what's going on? The way it was moving. Put the window down to like look at the lights underneath. And we're trying to get on 275 at the same time. And it's just hovering there. And then pivots and we lost it with the trees. So because it was just above the trees at 275 in Ford Road. And so it began going like southwest.
Kind of parallel with us because we were getting on 275 south and it rotated. I could see it rotate, but it was these three big glowing orbs that weren't really giving off light. It was really bizarre to try to explain. It was not like a spotlight. It's like glowing.
recessed lighting that had no beam coming down from it.
And my best estimates were that this triangle was about anywhere from 200 to 300 feet, probably somewhere in the middle on each side. And those glowing orbs were up recessed in it. And it was so low that the street lights that were reflecting off of Ford Road were reflecting light back up into the sky, was kind of illuminating the bottom of it. And it looked like it was a skin and you could see the light because I got closer to it once I was going around the Michigan U-turn to merge onto the expressway. So she lost sight of it as I was going around and I'm starting to gun it because my brain is going, it's not moving. There's no wings. We're close to the airport, but those aren't landing lights. They're pointed down and recessed up. And I could see the light kind of being absorbed almost by that's the only way I can really describe it. Or if you take like a lighter over a piece of metal and you get it really hot and you can see the colors change. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like absorbing or whatever, but you couldn't see the triangle, but you could get the faint outline from the light hitting it and it kind of going around the side and then disappearing. And I would say that the thing was probably close to anywhere from 20 to 30 feet thick, at least like 3 stories high. And it was just sitting there like a perfect triangle. And as we were kind of getting ready to go underneath it and I'm gunning it to get away from the thing. It pivots. It doesn't bank. It doesn't fly over us. It's stationary. and it rotates in place, then starts going south, moving parallel with us. And I gunned it, and we went down this sound abatement down into 275 by Ann Arbor Trail Road there?
No,
it
was Ford Road heading towards Michigan Avenue.
So in between Michigan Avenue and Ford Road, there's a place where you go down, and there's the wall there. And I lost sight of it. Besides, I was on the opposite, I was on the driver's side of the car, so she would have saw it more than I did. But with the trees and everything, we lost it. We came up, and I'm expecting it to be right there. I mean, the thing was huge and just creeping along. And we look up, it was gone. Just like that.
Well, in the area, just for the listeners, there's a small airport in Canton around like Lily Road or
it's
whatever.
Tiny though. It's for general aviation aircraft.
This object was probably the size of that little airport.
Yeah.
And then there's Willow Run.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, because we grew up right over by Willow Run.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking, okay, it's headed in the direction of Willow Run. And then it was headed opposite the direction of Metro Airport, because we live down by the airport.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was gone.
But there was nothing on any flight schedules as far as, what was looked up, and MUFON never got back with us.
Yeah. We filed the report and everything. And so, never heard anything back. So we talked for a little bit about it. Like, what was that? Did we really see that or whatever? And I don't know which one of us came up with the idea. We were like, you know what, let's start just a little Facebook group and see if anybody saw the same thing.
Yeah.
And they can come on and tell us what they saw.
We were honestly trying to find somebody who was up at 2:30 in the morning driving around Ford Road 275.
And there were cars around, but nobody seemed to react to it. And so we did that. And then the people started, and this is a private group. We just put it out there and with our story, and people started signing up, telling their stories. Like, what in the hell?
Well, and then lately too, there's been some activity in the Downriver area around Southgate, Lincoln Park. And so there's been folks who have been posting in a Downriver and Friends group on Facebook. And so I know that I've shared our link out a couple times there too, because now we're hearing stories from, the Downriver area.
Yeah. But when we first started this, we had people starting to show up, and it started to snowball to the point where now we're at almost 4,000 people on this group, and we've read some of their stories on our podcast. But even before that,
it's a private group, so it's not like it was public either.
Right. And so people started sharing it out and things like that. And then a couple of years later, bring us around to about February. When did I get the itch? Maybe January. I said, you know what, with all of this stuff,
January of this year.
Yeah. With all of this stuff we're getting from people, other than just what we saw and other triangle information and things like that, people seeing something in different parts of the state, maybe we should just start a podcast and start talking about it. And oh my God, when we started reading people's stories out there and then started interviewing people, it just went nuts. It kind of changed our whole worldview on that whole situation. And as a scientist, I'm skeptical. I'm not going to believe things, even if I experience things. Like if Michelle wasn't with me, I probably wouldn't have said anything. I would have just, right? I would have just wrote it off, because I'm not going to talk about this. And now it's like we start the podcast and all of this stuff, and we're interviewing people. And one of the first people we get is Terry Lovelace talking about his flying triangle and abduction thing and what happened to him and his friend Toby while they were camping. And that was amazing and just frightening. And, because I want to know what things can show up in our airspace and do whatever they want and just disappear when they want, and maybe be a threat, maybe not, don't know. But why are they here?
Well, and at 2:30 in the morning, there's not a lot of air traffic around the metro area. I mean, most of the flights are coming in or going out at around 5-6 a.m.
Yeah. And just to clarify, I have a background in aviation. I was well on my way of having a student pilot, or my pilot's license. I was a student pilot. I've flown airplanes. My dad is a retired United Airlines pilot. I've been flying since I can remember with him in various airplanes on various airliners. In the military, when I was in the Army, I always joke with my students, my main job was jumping out of airplanes, rappelling out of helicopters, and blowing up tanks. That's what I did. That was my job. I was an anti-armor guy. I could hit a tank with a wire-guided missile off a Humvee at 3 miles away in smoke, and could, I've been around aircraft my whole life. This was not an aircraft. This was something else in the air. And no landing lights on it, no navigational beacons on it, no, because there was no wings, there was no engines, there was no sound, there was no movement of the structure at all, other than it didn't bank, it rotated. It defied every possible law of aerodynamics of how a plane flies today, even our best fighter jets, right? So that threw up the red flag, and it's like, well, I'm gunning it the hell out of here. and then it snowballed to where we're at today with, interviewing people and trying to get down to the bottom of what's going on. And then we find out that there's this UFO report then we find out what the Nimitz situation, and these videos start breaking. And then there's a UFO report coming out, and like, okay, this is real. This is the real deal. So why not put on our educator's hats, because we're lifelong learners, as they like to say, right? As a teacher, you're a lifelong learner. You go to all these professional developments and stuff, right? And you're learning how to become a better teacher and blah, 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 blah. Well, I put that hat on, though, when it comes to learning what is going on, what's really the deal with this community, what are people seeing and stuff. And so now I'm on like this massive fact-finding mission to figure out what the hell was this thing? What are they doing here? Who are they? Is there even a they? Right. And then we found out about the massive media coverage in 1966 of the Ann Arbor, Dexter, Hillsdale, UFO sightings that went on in March for about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks. At least that's how long it was reported for. And come to find out, you want to talk about conspiracy theories. J. Allen Hynek came in here and toting the Project Blue Book disinformation. Oh, it was just swamp gas kind of stuff. And the media bought it hook, line, and sinker, made everybody feel like a bunch of idiots, and then buried it. It was gone. I'm 51 years old. I was born in 1970. I never, ever, ever heard of anything about this. And it was huge. If you look up video records, the news media outlets had rooms filled with people, convention halls full with people to hear this explanation as to what these things were that people were seeing. They were seeing them land in their backyards and all of this stuff. Yeah, we've, what was it, 50 co-eds or something like that at the Hillsdale campus, all watched these things for a couple hours. Yeah. Gave their testimony and everything. Yeah, it was swamp gas. Yeah. I'm sorry. And so now it's like, what's really going on? We've had 70 years of covering up, and then the best we can get now that there's people like you and us asking questions and out there in the podosphere, I guess you would call it. Yeah. And the best answers we can get is a 9-page report that talks about
143 sightings, one balloon,
one was
deflated,
one deflated
balloon. Right. So the only data that they are looking at is the data from about the 2004 time frame. They're not going back the 70 years. Yeah. If I ever had Lou Elizondo on here, that would be one of the big questions I would have for him, and I'm sure he would obfuscate, right? He would dodge the question because he's awesome at doing it. I don't fault him for it.
Yeah.
I find him to be very good at it, and it makes me snicker sometimes. Well, I really wish I could get into that.
Yeah.
But don't worry. You'll be finding out more in a few months.
We'll get the next 9 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Because he still holds a security clearance, right? In his non-disclosure form. So that's the whole reason that he's held on to that. Because if he would let that go, granted, he'd be out of the loop going forward.
Yeah.
Technically, he'd be open to discuss. So there's got to be something there that he knows as to why he's holding on to that security code.
Well, he's the whistleblower. You know, he's the dude that brought those videos out. But I would ask him, why wasn't ATIP going back through all of this stuff? I mean, obviously the government's been interested in these things for a long time. Project Blue Book or whatever project, ATIP this, Blue Book that, whatever. And, you know, why are we only talking about 143 things in this report? You guys got 70 years of catching up to do, man. So what's holding you guys back? What's going on?
143 is like 2 cities down south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mike, was it our second episode where we did that? We did like a little like history, just a brief synopsis of the correlation between the U.S. government and the UFOs. Is that the one we did it on?
I don't remember which episode it was, but I remember covering Alan Hynek and all that kind of stuff, and just the sheer number of reports and whatnot that there have been. It's almost it's very hard to believe that there's not any credibility to all of it. You know, to just chop it all up to like swamp gas. I don't know. I feel like anybody that, you know, there's problems with absolutes, right? Anytime there's an absolute, it's almost never completely true. So you gotta, I don't know. I like William said, I think I've jumped a little bit more on the bandwagon of like, I do think there's something out there. Now what that is, or, you know, what it's capable of,
exactly,
what it's here for, all that kind of stuff, I have no answer for. But I do think there is something to, you know, like obviously you guys had a personal experience, and just out of curiosity, you said this was in 2018, right?
Yes, March of 2018, which by the way is an interesting correlation that we have found, is that it seems like March here in Michigan for UFOs, especially the triangles, seem to show up around March 9th through the 23rd area time frame, which with a lot of the people that we've had on our podcast talking about their encounters with a triangle and possible abductions, missing time, and all that kind of stuff, it is always in March, which is really strange.
It is strange.
And their teachers take the kids out on the field trip. They're just stopping by here. It's an observation place. They observe us a little bit.
It's like, wait a second, when is spring break now?
Right. So that's why they got rid of our spring break as real teachers. So we would be in working so they can come by and go on a field trip.
Yeah, it's you know, you go into those numbers, and that was one of the things I love doing, is digging back. I know that people are like, why are we rehashing these old cases, you know, within the community, within ufology as a whole?
Right.
But you have people that, it's irregardless of age, and in my opinion, it kind of transcends that, because you guys might be from a slightly different generation than us than we are from each other, but we were on the same page. When I stumbled across the 1966 incident, I was blown away. I was like, this is right in my own backyard, right? And virtually, you know, in Dexter there. But the idea that this stuff now, we're kind of at a cool precipice of it, because it's, you go onto the CIA database, there's a lot of disclosed information because of people that have, you know, put in the Freedom of Information Act, and they've gotten this stuff declassified, and you're pulling the stuff out that proves that this has been going on. So it's a really cool time for us we're no longer speculating. We're saying, hey, here's a document that I don't care what they said back then. Here's the document that says this did indeed happen. And we found with Project Blue Book, Project Grudge, and I don't remember the very first one, what it was called, but they had, oh, Micah, what was it? I don't remember the exact numbers, 23,000 or whatever it was, total cases. And of these, J. Allen Hynek had said that 23% of them were unexplainable. Well, then I guess
That's
turn
a
over
lot.
to, that's a staggering amount. I remember we went through the numbers one time in like episode 2, but we broke it down where he said, I think it was 11%. And then the U.S. military got a hold of it and they broke it down even further to 3%. Well, even at 3%, I remember Mike and I broke out the math. It was like one every week and a half, wasn't it, Mike?
Yeah,
Or 2 weeks for 22 years?
it was a pretty high number of cases that are unexplainable. I don't think it was. I want to say it was somewhere in the 350, 400 ish
Well,
range.
I just did a quick mash of the numbers. 27,000, you 3% of that, you're looking at 810 cases that were not explained.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Right.
a lot.
That's a lot.
And then what
That's
got
a lot.
really weird too was the Condon committee was formed after this, right? To do this research, which was part of the end of the swamp gas incident, right? When
Right.
Congress finally says, okay, you got us, we're going to put in this report, we're going to do the research for you. And they form a committee, which J. Allen Hynek said, listen, I messed this up. He did kind of admit that he botched it and said, you guys need to form an entity separate from the U.S. government, to study this. And they still didn't do that. It still was through the U.S. military. And they tried to put up the funding. Nobody would take it. It was taboo to take it. So no academia was taking it. And then finally, when the Condon committee gets together, they put in all these like steps and rules and regulations that said that you couldn't research anything unless it went through their findings. And they reduced the numbers way down, something like 35 or 40 cases. I mean, they threw everything out.
Yeah.
And another thing that was weird too is during the time that J. Allen Hynek was studying through Blue Book, he said the first couple of years, and I can't remember the commander was running at the time, he said he genuinely was looking for answers. But then he got a new guy came in there, and I don't remember that gentleman's name either. I feel terrible for not knowing, but I don't remember his name at this time.
Right.
And he put in some rules and regulations that said that nobody could discuss anything, military personnel, which is obvious, about any of this. They said that they could be charged with a what was it, Mike? Not like a court martial, but similar to that. And beyond the military, said that no civilian would be allowed to discuss this. So somehow yourself, say like J. Allen Hynek wasn't in the military, he was contracted to them. If you were contracted in as a civilian, you were also supposed to keep your mouth shut about it.
Yeah,
So
if I remember correctly, there was a felony charge for.
Wasn't a felony? I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I think it was a felony charge for talking
to me,
about.
That's clear evidence that you had a suppression of this information. To me, I think that should be common knowledge for anybody who looks at it for a little bit. Right. We realize that that's the case, but it's weird that we're just now getting in the last couple of years, and great, it's ramping up. But honestly, it wasn't until like 2016 when the Nimitz and the Tic Tac incident that kind of took place, and Joe Rogan and all that, and had Commander Fravor on. That was the real turning point for, let's say, the masses, as it were. And now it's become a little less taboo to, for you guys in your position, educators, to be able to come out and talk about this, because let's face this, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, maybe even in the 90s, that wasn't something that you guys probably could have been able to do and have a career at the same time. That could have been controversial, to say the least.
That's stuff of and they still do it to this day, which I've said this before, really ticks me off to no end. But whenever you had a news program come on and there was, the Phoenix Lights or whatever, and the news comes on to talk about it, here comes the X-Files music, right? Yeah. Immediately put that programming in your head of okay, this is going to be kind of tongue in cheek, and the anchors are grinning and making their little gray alien jokes, and little green men from Mars and that kind of thing. And it's like, you are instantly just discrediting your own report about something that somebody went through. Somehow, some way, something happened to these people, or this witness, or they saw something, and you just totally dismissed what they have to say.
And people always say too that there's no way. They're like, there's no way that everybody could be in on this and keep this if it was the case. Well, look at the Phoenix Lights, for instance, right? You had the governor of Arizona come out and do a press conference to be like, we have the alien, and dressed up. He had somebody dressed up as an alien. He himself later admitted and apologized, saying, hey, myself and my son's seen this. So he had that cognitive dissonance to be able to come out and make fun of it openly, knowing he had seen it. That's how strong the hold was just in the public forum. And you're absolutely right. You hit on the idea. We always talk about that with the programming and things. You get into Project Mockingbird. Well, one of the Micah, what was the first thing you covered? You covered MK Ultra, right? Which was a very devious thing, and this isn't something that's like, oh, that's maybe this is all declassified. For 20 years the American CIA entities within the CIA experimented on not only U.S. citizens but Canadian citizens, citizens of South America, everywhere across the board. And then you roll into what happened with Project Mockingbird, where they started monitoring the mainstream media and at least suggesting or guiding them in their positions. But I truly think that they took a lot of what they discovered in those studies and realized that there are ways. The human mind is such an enigma, and it just like, it fascinates me because I recognize at any point that we could program ourselves to believe something. And that's so scary. It's such a bizarre thing to realize. If I just absorb myself into something, I could convince myself that this is a thing. And so to me, they've really figured that out. And I just posted a song today to our group, actually, and he was singing about just propaganda everywhere you look, whether it's food or any, it's just,
well, you don't have to look far anymore. They've got people with the phones.
Yeah. 100% walking zombies.
You're right. That is the Walking Dead. I mean, and unfortunately, my wife and I being educators, it's a huge battle. These kids come in on their phones. I call them Joe Biden's Secret Service agents because they hide their phones, but you can see the little white earbud with the wire. I walked up to one kid today. I said, so is Joe Biden okay? They're like, what are you talking about? I said, well, you're in the Secret Service, right? That's why you got that earbud and that wire going, and then they start laughing. But I mean, what better way to take a young mind, My one chemistry teacher that works with me, he was telling me that his son is the only boy in 8th grade at his school that does not have a cell phone. Every other kid in 8th grade at that school has a cell phone. So instant programming. I mean, that's why they called television programming. It was to create, change your behaviors, right? And I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole too. I love that stuff. But
and the fact that the majority of them were virtual during 2020, so that cell phone was right next to them.
A year and a half.
Now trying to break them of that habit. The kids, you can tell when they're on their phone because they stare at their crotch.
Yeah, I mean, right. They like to hide them between.
It's
their
like
legs.
If the lights are out, your face is eliminated. It's not your Chromebook. It's like we know the light's coming from somewhere,
right? You got glowing testicles or something, right? Which if you've been on that phone too much and carried it in your front pocket, you might have glowing testicles. But I mean, it's constant, back, me and my friend were talking about this at work today, back when the internet was coming out, when we were kids, it was like, wow, there's going to be so much information for us to access. And it was like trying to learn everything that you can. It's like, wow, we can look at stuff from other countries. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And you just taking stuff in and like, wow, this is amazing. Today, we've got TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, and social media.
Yeah.
That's where the kids' brains are. They're not interested in learning anything. They're interested in performing on these things. I had girls today dancing in my classroom. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And I see the phone standing up on a table, recording themselves, trying to do a TikTok video. Like, okay. Give me the phone. You can have it at the end of school, but I shouldn't have to waste my time policing that kind of thing, and nobody should. The kids should be of enough mind that you're in school to learn, but what they're learning is how to do stupid things to put themselves on video for 30 seconds to maybe get some likes that makes them feel good about themselves. And then when they don't get the likes, now they have self-esteem issues. And then you can talk about like the increased rates of teen suicide and the bullying that goes on, not in the schools. Oh no, the kids can barely talk to each other in school, but online, those kids can
the glowing testicles grow large.
That's true. It's true. And they shred each other. They just shred each other on social media, especially the girls. The girls fight via emotional and mental warfare. And boys are still boys. They're the dummies. They are. I mean, speaking as one, right? Speaking as one, our brains don't go very far. Oh, video games. Let's go play basketball. This, that, and the other. Oh, she's kind of cute. Okay. And that's
mom.
You're right. Right.
And
And some stupid mom joke or D's nuts joke.
I was gonna say, my wife calls me her fourth child for a reason. I mean, what do they say? You're almost, what is it? As a, I think it's the average person, but I know for a fact males, I think it's 27 or 28 before we fully form the cognitive
frontal lobe.
The frontal lobe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance is stuck in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, you look at that and it's,
girls are much more advanced than boys are until about that age. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because they have to be, because they are the part of the species that is responsible from the time they, have their first, menstrual cycle. They are what? I'm a scientist. I can talk about this stuff. But they are now at 12, 13, 14 years old. They are now capable of bearing a child. That's responsibility. They have to be ready for that just in case. So that's why they're much more advanced than just, the dumb boys running around.
I think he's confessing that he's my man child.
Oh, okay. I'll advance. I'll agree. I'll be your man child, honey.
You guys definitely hit a point that I think is worth hitting on a little more, which is the idea that Mike and I had hit on this before, that, in my opinion, everything is a tool, almost every single thing. I don't think there's anything that's innately made or created that's just pure evil or pure good. Correct. It is all about how we utilize that tool. And the internet, when it first hit, oh my goodness, like you guys said, I mean, granted, we were pretty sheltered. I don't think we got our first computer with the internet actively working until like probably 2004, maybe somewhere in there, 2000, somewhere in there. The AOL, the dial-up, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't be on the phone and the internet at the same time. I was like, my kids are never going to understand that concept. I still sometimes forget. I'm like, we couldn't be on the phone and the internet
That's right.
at the same time.
You just want to find one of those CDs that they used to send out for AOL and just show them that.
Every week you either got those hard floppy, those little 3.5-inch hard floppy discs, or you got the whole like CD and it was like AOL,
Yep. Yeah. And everything took forever. There's that file thing.
What? Okay, I don't remember. What are you talking? Every week?
Oh yeah, in junk mail, you would end up with it was crazy. They were just sending out these discs by the millions to people to get you to join AOL. Put the disc into your computer and turn on the modem. Beep, boop, beep.
They would offer it for 99 cents,
or whatever, free month or whatever.
And an hour and 44 minutes later, you might have it downloaded. And be on the
say the file would just be like,
yeah. And all the while your mom's screaming because she can't get on the phone because you got the phone line tied up.
But you're right. Back then, the internet, I think that was one of the things that didn't see coming. And I absolutely, as much as we are right now, if you're listening, utilizing the internet, and it is still has a chance, one has to say, looking at what the internet was, let's just take the year 2010. When you got on YouTube in 2010, it was phenomenal. You would research something or type in something and it would, the algorithm would say, oh, you're interested in that, and would just keep feeding you the same genre of stuff. Now you can clearly see, matter of fact, I mean, without getting too far in it, I've seen where I've been unsubscribed to things. I've had to go back and subscribe, and I didn't unsubscribe. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh yeah, so, they unsubscribe you.
And then you look at what Facebook did when they took over. You had TikTok, you had Instagram, and you had Reddit, and some other ones, and they started buying these all up. They started merging it all into where everybody thinks they have these multiple options, and really it's all one big show that's ran by one person. So we always joke saying that people with the news or any of that stuff, you walk in a room and there's like 6 different windows, and they think that they're picking the window that they want to look out and that they support that view because it looks better, whatever. And they don't realize that behind them is just this giant window that picked these 6 windows for them. So you're not really getting to have a freedom of choice. And the issue in that is, and I totally get it, it's a scary thought because it makes you, at first, you seem to, I felt like a crazy person when I had to think like that. I said, well, wait a second. I sound like a crazy person saying, what if this has all been picked for me, right? What if this is all fake? And I understood that seemed irrational until I started looking up the history of what had happened in relation to, just say, the UFO phenomenon, our history on how we've been taught about what took place in the country as a whole, as far as geology and all of that. You start to realize that there seems to be some sort of underlying control to all this. And I don't really understand that part of it yet. I'm not saying I have any sense of understanding of it, but I cannot deny that there's something there that seeks to make people in general ignorant. It's not even that we're stupid. We're just ignorant in the sense, because if you knew this, if you just had an inkling about it, you'd start questioning so much more. And I think once that ball gets rolling, that's one of the things that you hit on the point of, they need that 30 seconds of fame, right? It's all about going along with the flow. Because if you contradict the flow, you know, a real hero or trendsetter, generally speaking, had to contradict the flow of the stream at some point. And that's not a fun job. And it's so scary to be that person now. And now you're just canceled. So it's
well, look at what they're doing to the kids, though. And see, they've got the audience that they want to program. You know, I tell Michelle, it's the Pied Piper syndrome. You know, these cell phones in these little kids' hands, because what they're doing is they're getting them addicted to these dopamine hits. You know, they get a like, or somebody likes their video. I mean, I even fall prey to it when I look and see how many hits and downloads our podcast, you know, our recent podcast has gotten or whatever. I'm like, yes. And then I sit back and think and go, wait a minute, you know, it doesn't really matter. We're doing what we're doing because we're doing it.
Went right back to teenager mode.
I did, because it's that dopamine hit.
Man child.
Oh, thank you. As I kick her chair. I'll show you, man child.
Well,
I'm going to kick you.
Well, here's the thing. The internet, from our perspective, as far as looking, like you said, looking things up, the internet itself is a wonderful thing for tools of knowledge. So if we're talking about the current generation that is so linked in with social media, it's social media that has stunted like the kids that we work with now, because absolutely, it's not just the likes and everything. They think that a lot of that is just reality.
They live in a fantasy world where, you know, like I was explaining to my kids the other day about some of the last planes leaving Afghanistan and how there were people leaving that country, and they were so desperate to leave, they were hanging on the outside of the airplanes and falling off to their death. They had no idea what was going on. Why? Because it wasn't on TikTok. It wasn't on Instagram. It wasn't, you know, Snapchat it, you know, so they had their basis of reality is a fantasy world that's created by, you know, the Facebooks and everything out there, this fake reality. And then when real reality happens, they can't deal with it. Now you see the anxiety and this, that, and the other, because they don't know how to deal with reality. Their reality is watching a stupid video and Tide Pods and all this stuff. And, you know, what's this latest thing? I forgot what it's called. Vicious Licks or
Devious
Licks, where there's, you know, the students are going around stealing the most craziest things that they can out of schools, like bathroom stall doors,
oh my God,
desks, chairs.
Well,
you know?
TikTok has blocked it, but Instagram still has it on there.
Right.
So,
but now we're looking at a third party vendor to now police people's behaviors, which opens up a whole nother door. Right. So, but the whole thing is that, you know, you can call it a conspiracy theory or whatever. I know what I see from working with the kids. And to me, it's just a stealing of their attention, a dumbing them down so they're more easily programmable. And it's really all about marketing. How many ads can I get in front of your face within that half a second? And then they learn from you. They look and see, how long do you spend looking at something on your phone or on social media? I mean, we were talking Not too long ago, when we were mentioning something about some product or going somewhere or whatever, and go on Facebook, and
Delta always pops up in my feed.
What shows up in your feed?
Delta is always there.
They're listening through your phones.
Oh, 100%. And
yes.
I remember the first person and this was when I was like 18, maybe. I was at a party, and this guy, I don't know what this guy was doing there, because we were all like teenagers, and this dude was probably in his probably 50s, showed up. I think he was their weed dealer or something. I don't know at the time.
Right.
And I didn't really know. I was like too, Christian or whatever is in church, and I was like, oh, people are doing drugs. Oh. But I didn't know who this guy was. But he gets there, man. He just starts going off, oh man, big brother's listening. And I remember like in my head a little bit, I was like, this
guy's crazy.
Yeah. And then you find out about the Patriot Act, and you find out all this stuff that's 100%. That is what happened. And you look what they did to Edward Snowden. They made him an absolute criminal. I mean, he was what was he convicted of, Mike? He was actually convicted of what's it called?
Was it espionage?
Essentially, like a terrorist. There's a term for when you go against your nation.
Treason.
Treason. Thank you.
Yeah.
He was considered like a treasonous act. And all that happened with him was, and he didn't even mean to, he stumbled, because the government is, and most high, security companies in general have a very compartmentalized way of working.
Absolutely.
Right? So people don't know what's going on.
Right.
But he got good enough by accident. Someone retired and they didn't fill his position. He started covering for it. And he just happened to start seeing two sides of the coin, as it were, going, well, wait a minute, here's what's really going on with what I'm doing. This is what's funneling to him. And he started putting pieces together. When he got stranded, when they shut down his visa and pulled everything so he couldn't move anywhere, he just happened to be in Russia. But the story got spun that he ran to Russia.
Right.
He did an interview with Joe Rogan. It was pretty boring, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But it was so educational. It was just the idea of, he broke down that stuff that, listen, you guys remember when we used to get cell phones back in the day, you could take the battery rate out. Yeah. Now, they say you still can with these, and I think there's a couple ways you can look them up, but it's not easy. You know what I mean? It's not like you can just. He was trying to point out that even when you have,
I don't know about your phone, but my phone, I literally got to take the back glass off.
Yes.
Remove the battery, which is held on by glue, and the chances of me breaking that glass, taking it off, is highly likely.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty much, it's not removable.
You've always hit on that, Mike, as saying that, especially when it came to politics, it's the idea of these echo chambers, and people back in the day, used to have Walter Cronkite, I think his name was. Everybody's seen the same person, is my point. They would see the same news anchor, they would hear the same news, and then they could have that discussion, an educated discussion the next day. Even if they disagreed, they were basing their information off the same thing, at least. Now, one could say for sure, okay, that's a very controlled way, and you're not wrong. But what's happened now is that it's become so disassociated from one another that there's not even conversations happening between demographics and different points of views, because all they see is their echo chamber and the people that support them and their beliefs, and the algorithms continue to feed them that. It doesn't ever question their point. And it's only further to push this divide. And that's one of the things we've always tried to push on our show, is that stuff that's going on, if we let it tear us apart, it will. But at the end of the day, we all have, no matter your political point of view, we all have the same human basic needs and wants and desires. And that should be what's important at the end of the day. This other stuff that's going on, we got to get back to the basics of understanding that they really and truly work for us if we truly hold them accountable. But the fact that we always call them our leaders and stuff versus this is an employed person from us to represent us, we the people as a whole. It's just, those are one of the things that bother me. And Ronald Reagan, I believe it was Ronald Reagan in the 80s, when he did away with the fairness doctrine through the news broadcasting, which said, hey, you've got to give it balanced time to each point of view. Right. One of the biggest travesties that I think ever took place. And in our generation, we didn't even know that had happened. We just grew up in that. We didn't know. Right. And, at least back then, our father was one of those people, he was a huge history buff, and I remember bookshelves. You remember those bookshelves, Mike? He'd have bookshelves of just, rows of books, and he'd read all these. When they would come in, he'd read them and put them away. And people really I maybe would put you guys around the same age as what he was. You guys really knew what you knew, meaning you guys, we always joke with him saying he was a walking encyclopedia, whereas we were starting to fade on that, right? Like we had things we'd read, but then it was like, if I don't know, I'll just Google it.
That's it.
Now it's gone to the next level where it's scary sometimes. I find myself even doing it.
Yeah, now you'll Google it and just look at the first response, even though there's 10,000 responses for something. or God forbid, there's you Google something and there's a headline, and it just so happens that they know what worldview you kind of lead toward, and that's the headline you'll get with the article. It's it's, I don't want to say it's conspiratorial, but I'm going to say it's the parapolitical type of things that are out there, that and that's another rabbit hole too. I mean, you start talking about the good old Alex Jones kind of stuff, right? But
helicopters,
right. They're making the frogs gay.
Forgot about him,
right?
I mean, I didn't forget, but it's funny. I mean, the guy kind of disappeared.
Right, he disappeared, but then you start, seeing some things, and you're like, man, he was talking about this 5 years ago. Wait a minute. And so, man, you could go down that rabbit hole, like just crazy with the conspiracy, but I think it's all driven by power and money. It's marketing, and it's a way, it's the new quote unquote new economy, right? It's devastating to kids, and from my standpoint, when I feel sorry for these kids, because I look out at them and I go, what kind of job do you think you're going to have? You can't do a basic fraction. You don't understand what percent means.
That's scary.
Right. They can't read analog clocks. It has to be digital.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's, and if they don't understand something, it's onto the phone to look and see what's the first thing they can find, instead of, whatever happened to weighing different sources.
Yeah. Right? I always like what time is it time for you to learn how to read an analog clock?
Right.
I got one on the back wall.
There's
back
a
there
lot of history, but there's a lot of history to that analog clock that, even when I was younger, wasn't taught. I mean, that goes back to, understanding the rotation of the earth, 24 hours a day. It goes back to the zodiac, that there's 12, zodiac, and you look at the cosmic clock that is constantly ticking, and the numerology and stuff, that it's all been buried. And it's quite amazing.
I think one could boil it down to kind of what we always said our podcast was about a little bit, podcast for critical thinkers, is it's critical thinking. It's challenging one's point of view. Like I seek to try and do that all the time, where I understand that currently I have the position I have right now, and I defend it with the facts or what my current understanding. But if I am presented with evidence that clearly is correct, and in that moment I realize, okay, I can either choose to be ignorant and just continue to reinforce my own false sense, or further my education in that, adopt that and move forward, then that should be the goal for everyone. But I really think it's, Micah, you've hit on this a lot, where it's no longer the idea of being a critical thinker. It is simply, we need you to just be, like the old another brick in the wall, as it were. It's just, we have a task for you to fill, and you're gonna.
I mean, it's removing the individual. It's the individual no longer matters. It's groups. I mean, if you really look at society,
why would you want to be a critical thinker if it takes you out of your comfort zone? See, it's all about being comfortable and where you're at. Why do I have to question anything when I'm having a good time on my phone? I'm having a good time on social media. What is there to question? Everything's fine, right?
Yeah,
so in order to be
complacent.
Yeah. Well, in order to be a critical thinker, you have to, understand that there's problems that you have to think through. And that's why I'm a scientist. That's why I like science and I like teaching it, because exactly what you were saying, if new data appears in an experiment or something, the science changes.
Yeah.
Right? That's the way it's done. Right.
It sounds so bad, but I can't stand that slogan. The science is settled right now.
No, there is no settled science.
Like, exactly. I was like,
there is not.
Science of science is that it is continually evolving.
We could make some kind of a new type of piece of technology, like the CERN super collider, maybe something different, maybe one in space or whatever, and discover something new that rewrites the laws of physics. Right. Science changes. It's constantly evolving. And if you don't understand that, it's just like religion and science debates, right? Why would you debate that? Because it doesn't fall into the realm of science. And people like who piss me off, like Bill Nye, who thought he was going to be the great, and any of these so-called scientists. I hate Bill Nye. I'm sorry, Bill.
I used to really respect him. I really did. And then I started realizing the same thing you're saying is it became a propaganda tool. It's just like, who's the other one?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson is another one. Yeah.
And he's joking around about UFOs and things like that. Okay, there's a UFO report now from the government. Now what?
Yeah.
Right. But anyways, it's like now I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
No. It'll come back. It's old age happening. But it's just yeah.
It was like called sometimisms or something like that.
Sometimers, yeah.
That's
Sometimers, I'm thinking. But it's the why as a scientist, if you understand how science is done, it's not a step-by-step process like we're taught in school about the scientific method. It's an ever-evolving thing. Why would you want to go and debate somebody about their religion in the first place? Because you guys shouldn't even be in the same room when it comes to that, because you have no common frame to talk about. It's like, who can present the best argument to prove your point? Scientists deal with measurements and experiments. They're repeatable. You have some type of imperial measurement and things that you can recreate and have other people try to recreate to support your claim at that time with the technology that you have to do these things. Now you're gonna try to say that science can prove or disprove God. We can't measure God. Yeah. We can't make God appear. We can't make angels or ghosts appear or whatever when we need to do this kind of an experiment. So if you can't do it, it's not science. If it's not science, that does not mean that those things don't exist. We just don't know how to measure it yet.
Right.
So there's no, these television people that let their egos run wild. And, I have to deal with the kids coming in that have seen some of this stuff and the way they talk. And some of them come from very religious backgrounds. And they tell me, I don't believe in science. Okay, well, if I give you a meter stick and I say, measure that table and it's 2 meters long, do you believe in it now? Well, all I'm doing is measuring. I'm like, that's science. That's data. You just collected data on that table.
Exactly.
Right? So, but that's what they've been told. Because why? Why is there a rift? Why does there have to? We're in 2021. There should not be a rift between what's right, religion or science. I know religious scientists, right? Your belief, your philosophy, your life, your worldview, your life view is different than your objective view, right? Of the objective world, what you can measure, what you can touch, what you can see. But okay, then I guess there's no such thing as love. Well, what are you talking about? Well, measure it.
Yeah. Science
can't measure it. We can't measure consciousness. I guess we're not conscious. I mean, it's silly.
And we're getting much closer to not being conscious.
Well,
cell phones and all that kind of stuff. If you think about
quick, everybody grab your phones.
Yeah. No, but you hit on a great point too, that I know that like Mike and I, like I said, being raised religious like we were and stuff, I was really into like, dinosaurs and all this stuff.
Absolutely.
And I remember hearing people, they would say like, oh, it's been, they, use the carbon dating to put it at whatever amount of years old. And we'd constantly get that, because how we were raised, they believed that the world was exactly 6,000 years old.
Yeah.
That was initially when we were pretty young. That was, one of the congregations you're going to. That's what they taught.
Yeah.
Because, well, a day with God is roughly 1,000 years and God created the day, in 7 days and all this. So,
well, they also went through and added up the lineages as well. the genealogy, right?
Which, the Bible, if nothing else, and again, I always say my beliefs are my beliefs and everybody should be their beliefs, and I'm not pushing anybody, but I will tell you the most religious texts, any of them, and it's not just the Bible, a lot of them are great for history. At least when you have that genealogy laid out like that, and it's giving you exact years, that's a great measurement tool, right? And you are absolutely right. When they dated it back to Adam, they're going, well, we're only coming up with I can't remember the exact number. It's just shy of 7,000 years or whatever.
Right.
And so they're going, well, this didn't exist. Dinosaurs might have not been real, all this stuff. And you have to start to say at a certain point, something's missing here, right? You might all actually be right in your own stance, but there's a cog that we're missing. There's a piece of this puzzle we're not getting. And then you find out what happened with way back in the day when the Catholic Church sat down, and there was originally, I think it was 181 books to the Bible. Maybe it was 141. And
if you're talking about the Gnostic writings and things like that as well.
Yeah. And
they went through and started throwing things out.
Reshaped this thing to be, all right, these, we were raised with the King James Version, so 66 books to the Bible. And then you find out, well, the Buddhists, I think, have 81, I think it is, or something like that. And then you have the Quran. You have all these different ones that, had this effect where they essentially are kind of telling the same stories, right? And they all have that, like you said, the Great Flood and different things. But even if you wanted to go with the science and religion thing, I always thought they kind of supported each other, because in Genesis, it talks about how every living thing came from the water at one point. It says that in there. And then you look at Darwin's theory, which neither here nor there, but Darwin himself was not necessarily the character that everybody boils him up to be. I mean, that guy had his own interesting points of view on life.
Right. Well, and it's important to know about Darwin as well. Darwin's book and things like that, he was not talking about how life started on this planet. His thing was the origin of the species. So people stop at the word origin. They don't take into account when this book was written and what was going on and stuff. He was looking at how things change based upon their environment. It had nothing to do with how life started on this planet. And as a matter of fact, again, that sometimes disease is kicking in, but it was a priest that came up with the whole Big Bang Theory.
Oh yeah, I do remember briefly hearing. I cannot remember that priest's name either.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, where
it was funny. I was just looking at something about it today, but yeah, it was a priest that came up with the idea. It was also a priest that came up with the whole Punnett square, mixing of genes when it came to breeding plants. So science started out as priestly sects or whatever. They were charged with figure out how God did this. And that's where they started. It was the priest trying to figure out, how did God create the world?
Yeah. Which is, it's so funny that history isn't taught. You hit on the point earlier. You were born in 1970, you said, right?
Yeah.
You were 1 year removed from the terrible math there. 3 years removed from the 4 years. My God. 4 years removed from the 1966.
Maybe it was 6 years.
God's sake. So 4 years removed from that incident, and you had it's gone. It's just, it was not in your scope.
Never mentioned.
Right. And it to me, that's why I think when we start looking at the 1800s and some of the technology was going on, early 1900s even.
Yeah.
Like if you ever looked up, oh my goodness, something Thomas Thompson Brown, I think his name was, or something like that. I think his name was Thomas Thompson Brown. He created anti-gravity in 1921 using magnets and electricity. Now, he went in and started working with the government, and nobody really knows what happened to him after that. He kind of just absorbed into that. But the point being, there's some stuff. That's why I think with everything we see up there, it's not always just extraterrestrial. I do think we have terrestrial crafts here that have either been dug up from archaeological digs, I would think, or have perhaps crashed here, and we have back engineered it. I do think that we have some of this technology. I personally believe that. But there's definitely an element there that we don't, that is extraterrestrial, in my personal opinion.
Well, with the government coming out with this report, if you used to think that Bob Lazar was spinning a great tale, and maybe he was, but it sure does lend a lot more credibility to his, the government's working on backward, engineering of craft. And like you said, I think he had mentioned that he believed that or he was given some information because they kept everything very much compartmentalized.
Yeah.
That one of them was dug up in some type of an archaeological dig.
Yeah. That's what he said, because it was like
Thousands
13 crafts, right?
Yeah.
He thought he seen like
some number. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I always wonder too, with like, say, let's look at Graham Hancock's hypothesis on us being this species with amnesia, right?
Yep.
And that if you look at America before and you see these different massive megalithic structures that exist around the world, one that would lend a little more credence because one would have to ask, all right, if we have our history wrong, why are you so opposed to Graham Hancock's point of view, or anybody that's challenging this main way of how it happened and the evolutionary chain as we know it? And I think that would flip everything on its head in a sense. If they are at these sites, parts of Cairo, Egypt and stuff where we are just not allowed. I mean, you were briefly talking about the cost that it would be to go there for a couple of days.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah. Johanna James is putting on a trip in 2022. Yeah. And the cost, it's, but you're absolutely right. Not only, in my estimation, not only are we a species with amnesia, but we're a species that has amnesia, and certain people, for whatever reason, keep making us have this amnesia over and over. Mm-hmm. And my question is, what is there to gain by being these gatekeepers of this fraudulent information? Are you all just very big frauds that say you're doing archaeology, and we're dipping into the ancient technology stuff now? But the best you could come up with are some of these cockamamie stories about how the pyramids were built and actually how old they are, or how old the Sphinx is, when every person that has any inkling of understanding or studying how old the Sphinx is and how old these things are, these were not done by copper chisels and quote unquote slaves moving, 2.1 million blocks to build just the second pyramid, into place.
Not to mention how heavy some of those blocks were.
Absolutely.
Thousands of pounds that you just you could just hoist up with sheer brute force of a human. Yeah. It's almost,
I mean,
impossible.
you can, I'm going to say that you can, with the right engineering and stuff, create counterweights and things, but you're talking, talking a structure that was the tallest structure. I can't remember, but it was the tallest structure in the world until they built the Eiffel Tower. Right. And then the Eiffel Tower became the tallest structure when that was completed. I want to say it's like 470 some odd feet. It depends on where you measure the Great Pyramid from, either the base or what they call, I think, the socle. So the Great Pyramid and all the pyramids are actually sitting on a platform, which then goes down a little bit further, because it was all encased with a casing stone, which were smooth, that had fallen off or whatever. But there's, the what is it? The stone of the pregnant woman in B.O.B.B, I think, in Lebanon. This thing is like 2,200 tons or some ridiculous number, and it's still sticking out of the ground. Whatever happened, they stopped work on it.
Yeah.
There's the obelisk in Egypt, where it looks like they were not they were carving out the bottom of this obelisk. It looks like it might have broke when they were carving it, yet there's scoop marks. It's like this weird scooping machine was scooping away the rocks from underneath the obelisk, like they were going to just lift it right out
using copper.
Yeah, right.
And
copper
bronze.
Chisels and pounding stones, right? and just a lot of brute force by whipping those slaves to move these hundreds of thousands of tons. It makes no sense.
Which they've
I
now
think
proven.
The biggest part that doesn't make sense is how perfectly put together those stones are, and
Absolutely.
how much, you know, precision would have to be in place.
Yeah.
That you just, if you go by the understanding that they had the technology we believe them to have had, it's darn close to impossible to have gotten that precise. Like,
and there seems to be so much hidden there still. Like you look at the technology with echolocation, I believe it's called now, or whatever. It's where you can shoot LiDAR. Thank you.
Yeah.
When they've flown over now and they've said, listen, with the one of the sphinxes there, that was excavated.
There's chambers under the Sphinx.
100 miles. One of them, they were saying over 100 and something, it was 50 feet down or whatever it was, but they're showing there's massive city-like chambers, not a one location. They're saying, listen, there's an entire city down there, and that isn't the only place that's happened. That seems to be around the world.
That's around the world. Yeah. Amazon. One of the things, I think it was Grant Hancock that was talking about this, was that in the Amazon, now that they've been, you know, it's a shame that they're basically clear cutting a lot of this, you know, the Amazon rainforest for, you know, wood to create for their ever expanding population and stuff. But one of the good things that's coming out of it is they're discovering these lost cities.
Massive.
They're massive.
Huge.
Massive.
Yeah.
And it's like there wasn't just a few humans running around before the last ice age. This place was populated. I mean, it absolutely was. I think one of the things, and it goes probably to the whole religion thing, is that, and this is just my speculation, but I think the reason we have these gatekeepers and these kind of people that are trying to suppress the information about what really happened before the last ice age is because if they say there was this huge flood that happened 12.6 thousand years ago, and there were survivors that continued now to write these stories, and it's not a myth anymore, now people would look at these books and these texts and these writings and go, oh, now always in the back of my head, I always thought these were myths and they really weren't real. You know, whatever religion it is you're following, all of them talk about this. Yeah. What else in here is true then, guys? Because now I'm casting doubt on what you told me in this book is not fictional.
Yeah.
It's historical. Now, what do you do with that? Right. And so I think that was a big way to, again, humans always want to control other humans. I mean, it seems like that's been the history, you know, the elite few, the priest class, the rich and powerful, the 1%, and we're all just serfs, and it's better just to keep them numb and comfortable, you know, as long as they're doing work for us.
Yeah.
But they've created this elaborate hoax of a history that is falling apart because of people like you on the internet, people like Johanna James and Ben from Uncharted X, and all these guys that are going to these places with not any kind of pedigree behind their name. They're just interested and they're seeing with their own eyes the core drills.
Yeah.
We just are able to do that because we had diamond tip drill technology now, but they were drilling these cores, solid, you know, beautiful round holes through these hard granite rock.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
And it doesn't make sense that how did they make that? And they never answer because they don't know. And it's a couple things. They want to control the narrative, and they don't want to show that they don't know something. Because if you go on any of these tours and you go to these places and even out west and you question them, they get very annoyed because they don't want to show you that they don't know. Yeah. They just want to read the script, get their paycheck, and move on. But absolutely, I am thoroughly convinced now with the people that I've talked to and the things that I've studied and stuff on the ancient technology type of thing. They had technology a lot more advanced than we give them credit for. Am I saying they had anti-gravity and cars and all this? No, I'm not. But they had an understanding of physics. They had an understanding of geology.
They had an understanding of metals. And I'm on the fence, but I'm thinking that a lot of these pyramids, they never found any body in the pyramid.
Nope.
They keep on saying it's a tomb in any of the pyramids. They keep saying it was tombs. I'm going more toward the line that these were some type of a harmonizing machine.
Yeah.
That they were some type of a power plant or some way that they were generating energy or something from the earth. So, and I haven't thought too much further than that about it, but because these things, they look like machines.
Yeah.
They look like a complex, even though simplistic, they seem like they were some type of a machine, or they're navigational markers. Because if you do all the math about how the pyramid is aligned to true north and the size, and if you scale it up, holy crap, if you scale up the Great Pyramid of Giza, like 1 to 42,000, I think it is, or 42,300 is a very specific scale. You get the exact measurement of the northern hemisphere of the planet.
Yep. And then they went like further though. Remember they were like, it was the distance between us and the moon times by itself was the distance from us to the sun. Like there was all these weird correlations that at a certain point you're like,
and it gets back to that number 9 that my wife always teases me about.
I mean, you think
it's 108. It's 108.
108.
And 1 plus 0 plus 8 is 9.
No, the time that we often wake up 3:33.
Yes. I wake up, it's just the other night, I woke up straight out of bed feeling completely refreshed, like, oh, it's time to get up. 3:33.
3:33. We got into this discussion with Guy Merritt.
Yeah, about the pyramids or the triangles
and everything.
Yeah.
It was 3:33 what time folks were waking up, and so
I'm now taking pictures on my phone every time I wake up in the middle of the night to track it. The other night, 2 nights ago, I woke up at 3:14. What's 314? 3.14 is pi.
The pi.
Why? Bizarre.
But 3 isn't that the most powerful or the strongest shape in supposedly of our understanding of like the universe as a whole? Isn't it the 3? Isn't that the most powerful?
Well, the 3
formation?
represents like the Holy Trinity. I know that there's that kind of a supernatural paranormal aspect to the 3. It's also the true witching hour. It's midnight's not the witching hour.
Yeah.
3 a.m. 3:30 is like the witching hour. 3:33.
And in literature, it's often used in motif as far as things happening in 3s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you always joke around.
That's true. 3 weddings, 3 funerals, 3 babies.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like, oh, did you see that so and so died today? Yep. Who are the next 2 gonna be? What always happens in 3s.
Yep.
And we just kind of throw that about, like, very nonchalantly, but it goes to the 3s. It's the 3, 6, 9 kind of numerology that goes on. And I like math, so I like playing around with the geometry and the sacred geometry. I'm digging into more and more.
Sacred geometry is amazing.
It's crazy. And again, I took geometry in high school. What did I learn? I learned about parallel lines and this, that, and the other. You know how much better I would have been at geometry if my teacher was sitting there telling me, okay, look at the angle size of a hexagon. Notice how it all adds up to 9, right? It's like I teach my kids to this day in high school. If you ever want to know if you've done a math problem where you multiplied anything by 9, just take your results and add up all the numbers. You should end up back at 9. 9 times 2 is 18. Crazy. 1 plus 8 is 9. 3 times 9 is 27. 2 plus 7 is 9. Right? Anything you multiply by 9 should equal 9 in the end. So it's a good way to, check. But that's a very powerful number to be able to do something like that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Micah. I interrupt you. Go ahead, Micah.
I guess I've always understood that. I just never thought about it in that way. And that's a very strange way of like that's actually kind of mind-boggling a little bit.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
That is strange. I'm trying to go through a bunch of numbers in my head right now.
Is this the moment in time that we say you're welcome?
Yeah.
Speaking of Michigan history, have you guys ever looked into much of the we all know the Bermuda Triangle, right? Again,
Right.
going back to these 3-pointed systems and stuff. And now I'd be curious to look up the
Michigan Triangle.
math, but the Michigan Triangle. Do you guys ever look it up?
Yeah, I've started digging into it. I'm trying to find some experts on it that want to come on and talk about it. It's very fascinating kind of stuff. Ships that have disappeared, aircraft that have disappeared, just like the Bermuda Triangle. And it's hard to pinpoint. I've had some people tell me that it's the Lake Superior area up north, but most of what I've found is that it's someplace around in Lake Michigan, off the west coast of Michigan, into Lake Michigan toward Chicago area, and then up north and away, which is interesting to me because I know in 1994, when people here in Southeast Michigan were having lots of flying triangle encounters, there was a UFO flap that was going on the west side of the state over Lake Michigan, in that area where people were reporting a lot of UFO activity in 94 over Lake Michigan in 1994. Yeah. So, very fascinating stuff. I would like to learn more about that. Absolutely.
There's actually a the thing that blew my mind. But first of all, I think they said something like, oh my gosh, I had it up for a second. I pulled up just setting it wrong. Yeah, right here. So for the past few centuries, there have been between 6,000 and 8,000 ships sunk at the bottom of the Great Lakes, with around 30,000 lives lost. Some of these mysteriously disappeared without a trace, one of them being Thomas Hume. And they go into different accounts of this stuff where people just vanished off the ship. You know, the one where the captain just went into rest because he navigated through, some of the ice throughout the night. Yeah, they're coming into port and he's just gone. There was one where these massive, what they said were icebergs in the sky, were raining down ice on them, and there was damage to their ship as they came in. So there's very strange phenomenon. Even the incident that happened over the O'Hara Airport over in Chicago, that involved the Michigan Triangle. But we were covering it because of a gentleman named, oh my goodness, Michael, what was his name? Stephen Kabaki. Was that his name? I think his name was Stephen Kabaki, if I'm not mistaken.
I remember talking to Stephen, but I don't.
Well, we didn't talk to him. We covered his case. He was a college student that I think went to Hope, William Mary or Hope off the
yeah. Are you sure? Are you sure that wasn't the Yeti one?
No, that wasn't the Yeti one. No, he was a cross country skier. He was in college there, and he was going out for a ski trip. He was cross country. So he was going to go out at a nightly ski.
Yeah, the guy that disappeared for what was it, like a few weeks or something like that?
15 months. Yeah, he disappeared for 15 months and then woke up in a cornfield in Pennsylvania, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it was, to this day, he's never, outside of the original little bit of snippet they gave in that article, he's never talked about it. He went on to be a very successful psychologist and wrote some books on some stuff, but he's never spoken about what happened. And he claimed he could not remember, even though he had a map on him, and he had a shirt from running a Wisconsin marathon, and he had money in his pocket, new shoes. Something happened, And what was weird is when they tried to find him, when they brought up the dogs to search for him, they found his spot. They seen his his path from his skis and his poles, and they said it stopped. He had stuck his skis, stepped out of his I guess they're ski shoes or whatever. I don't know what it's called. What are the right name?
Snowshoes?
That's not the right term.
Was he using snowshoes?
No, he was skiing. So he still said it was skis. I don't know what the term. And he left his poles there, and he walked 55 yards out onto the ice, and then his prints just stopped. They lost him there, and they searched this area. They couldn't find anything. And then at the end of the day, when they're calling off the search, the dogs couldn't find it. And they, pushed back the snow and the ice, thinking maybe he fell through, even though this was the middle of the winter. And they tried to eliminate all these options. They're coming back where they had initially started. And there's his backpack, which they said they had searched that area multiple times. So now you're getting into the kind of missing 411 deal where you're saying, hey, we've been through here and there's nothing here, and all of a sudden now there's evidence again. But what we found while covering that story, because that was an intriguing one in and of itself, was this other thing that I think is fascinating, which is that in Michigan, there is actually a Stonehenge. Have you seen this?
Oh, that's
under the water.
That's under the water in Michigan. And like, didn't they find like what they think may be a carving or something of like a mastodon on one of the stones, right?
Yeah. What's weird is they said
maybe.
Yeah, it was a mastodon, because it was weird because they said that they think the stones, give or take, they're estimating to be 9,000 years old. And mastodon supposedly went out 1,000 years prior to that. I think it was 10,000 years ago, give or take.
About 12,600 at the end of the last ice age. They were pretty much wiped out instantaneously.
Right. And I think it was, in 2007, it says on here. So they found it in 2007 at a depth of 12 meters in Lake Michigan, USA. And obviously they're keeping this location a secret right now because they say it has to do with...
That's not very far.
That's not very far. And they had a picture of it. I don't know if I can share my screen. I'm trying to remember, with Zoom, are you able to share a screen or not so I can show you guys?
Yep.
I think I sent in
if you scroll down, you'll see screen share. Button.
Oh yeah, it's there, but I think it says the host disabled participant screen sharing. So I think you might have to change that, and then I can do it. Okay. But to me, I mean, I know they're saying that they're protecting this right now because they say they don't want, obviously, tourists there, and it has to do something about some sacred American native ground.
Yeah.
So that's the story, and that could be accurate, but still, sometimes I'm
able to share now.
Oh yeah, perfect. Here we go. So I don't know if this will pull up for you guys now or not, but that's the location. And I mean, to me, that's fascinating. That's like, I just,
Lake Michigan. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And yeah, to your point, what you were talking about earlier with the mastodon there, I think it's, maybe.
Is that the guy floating right next to it, pointing to it? Scroll down a little bit.
Oh yeah. They did have, you're right. Here you go. Yes.
Right there. Yeah.
Yep.
Now that could be a form of pareidolia, because
your
brain wants to make your mind wants to make that pattern into something recognizable. Now that could be, but and then of course they outline it for you,
right.
But it's possible.
I would say just looking at the picture itself, I wouldn't pick out. I wouldn't pick that out. No.
Yeah, that's true. You could maybe see a face.
Yeah, it's kind of like, where are the clouds? Let's make elephants out of the clouds.
I mean,
but this in and of itself, though, that's undeniable.
That's different.
That's a different story.
Yeah. It's standing pillars in an area of flat, sandy bottom of the lake there. Yeah.
Which I'm trying to remember their timeline with us, and forgive me, but we were supposed to be under an iceberg at that time, right? 10,000 years ago in Michigan?
No, that would have been 12,000 years ago. So the ice,
so this would have been after.
Yeah, the ice. If the comet impact theory is correct, the ice was obliterated and gone after about 12,600 years ago.
Okay.
So that would have left a few thousand years for native people to do that work. Now, that water would have to have been not there, right?
Correct.
Right. So, it really, it's
because this was all a swamp, right? In the early 1800s, they had to drain the swamp, literally, as it were. I mean, so that's strange. Like I said, again, there's just this timeline stuff that gets weird to me. That's where I think, like, with the, I know it's a bit of a different twist, but that's where, like, Mike and I, like, he's always said, if I can't feel, touch, or smell it, right, I'm probably not going to believe it. I mean, am I wrong in saying that, Mike? Is it kind of your perspective generally?
Yes, no.
He's coming around.
Whereas, like, I'm open to the idea, as crazy as it is, I guess. But to me, I love the idea of, like, okay, we were always taught that the evolutionary chain is very clean, right? Like, it was this, and then there's us, and then blah blah blah, and we're good. But I always thought it's got to be messy. There's no way that it was just this clean thing, and that's why I always feel like if you wanted to get out there with, let's say a form of Neanderthal or something that was much bigger than us prior. Well, technically they were smaller, but whatever. But they were bigger somehow too at the same time.
At least they go back and forth on that. Fossil record, at least in the fossil record of what's been recovered. We are formulating based on on whoever's formulating, based on their life experience themselves, what they have found from, a leg bone, a femur, or a couple pieces of a pinky finger, right? So, and then they're constructing history. And this is where I go conspiratorial. They're constructing history to fit a certain narrative, and they're afraid to say, we've got this. We don't know. No, what they're saying is, we've got this. This is what we think. This is true. And you guys just follow right along. You don't need to go away, little man. We don't, you don't need to be bothered with this. We got this. If we tell you that the pyramids were tombs, they were tombs. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Even though, like you said, there's clear evidence that there's not. And that's why I think that if anybody's into Bigfoot and stuff, I always say, if it is a real being, and I suppose I'm not like completely closed off to it, I think there's a chance. I'm open to the idea that perhaps somehow there was some sort of evolutionary break off from what we are as humanity. And in my mind, why couldn't it be that? Why couldn't it have been this thing that continued on, as it were?
Yeah.
Somehow some survived. I mean, think about this for just a second. And going back to your talking about the Ice Age and how there seems to be this disconnect of, there seemed to have been an advanced civilization here, clearly prior to what we know as humanity. Right now, primatologists all agree that I think it's the orangutan, I can't remember the type of monkey, and another type of chimpanzee are all going through their Stone Age. Like, they're starting to use tools, they're collecting their tools, they're keeping them in spaces, they're actually using fishing poles and spears. They're doing this independently from being taught in nature.
Right.
So with that being said, was there a point when we were the chimps, as it were, entering the Stone Age, and whatever the Atlanteans or whatever you want to call them, where we're at right now, where we're gearing up to go to Mars? So I've always wondered, like, is this been a repeating cycle of life, as it were, that somehow some group advances enough to move on, and then the ones that are coming along that evolved somehow are going, what is this here? And I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just kooky, but
no, I think I see where you're going with that. And I agree, because in my mind's eye is that life is a universal constant. So in other words, if life can appear on a planet in whatever shape or form, it's going to. So, we're not a true being of evolution ourselves in our present states with the current different races and, all of this stuff. We are survivors. We are the ancestors of survivors of a huge cataclysm where there was probably not very many of us left. And science even talks about going back further than the last ice age, going back almost 60,000 years, where there was some type of a huge event that involved a lot of volcanoes erupting, where there was an estimated 5 to 10,000 humans left on this whole planet in somewhere in the area of South Africa. They were able to survive. That's it. So people then had to come from that, that survival group, and scientists they'll tell you this. I mean, it's in documentaries. They know this. They can trace our genetics, that we all have a common ancestor of humans to about 10,000 people that were the only ones left alive. Now, that's Homo sapien, but there could have been Neanderthal that survived too, or whatever, if there was other species of Homo sapien that might have been around at the same time. I'm not saying that there wasn't. I mean, and again, it depends on what timeline you want to follow, but think about that. So from 70,000 years ago, I think that's the number they kind of put at this, where there was this huge extinction event and humans were almost gone. Now you had, from that time frame, for humans to reboot for another 60,000 years and spread out from Africa to where we are. But then we get another cataclysm, the ending of the last ice age.
Yeah.
So look at how many advances we've made in the last couple hundred years. It's insane. So you mean to tell me that humans now, they're extending our genealogy, used to be 200,000 years. Now I think they're getting closer to humans have been around for almost 1,000,000 years in our current form, same brain size, everything, Homo sapien.
Yeah.
You mean to tell me that we were running around in butt flaps for 900,000 years and we didn't advance to anything just recently? Now, again, I'm not talking about cars and stuff, but when you look at that time frame, we did this in 200 years, the Industrial Revolution and all that. We did this much in just this little bit of time. And our brains can't even comprehend what it would be like to be 1,000 years old, what that even means, because we're not very good with that time thing. Yeah. You mean to tell me that humans, same brain size and everything, were not more advanced? They didn't advance themselves at all. The spear was their happy moment. Nobody, right? Nobody decided, hey, look at this strange piece of volcanic glass is capturing sunlight and glowing. Fire, the wheel, all of this kind of stuff. Come on, it's one of those things that makes no sense to me. And then my big thing is I'm like a 2-year-old. Why would you do that? What is the point of doing that? To tell people this strange history that we've only been a modern species within the last 150 years since what was the one that we always learned, the cotton gin, really kicked off the
that was
really kicked off the Industrial Revolution. Oh, come on. So I don't know. I don't know
why.
Be
hard pressed to say that you could almost be pressed to say that we've accomplished in the past 30 years what we did in all of the 100 years prior.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's gotten so fast and so rapid that, I mean, the AI stuff it could be either, again, it's going to be a tool. It's either going to be the most phenomenal thing that we ever have as a species, or the in a sense downfall. I mean, I really feel like it could go either way. It's about how it's going to be utilized.
Well, if we keep dumbing ourselves down with what was it that I used to say a long time ago? Technology is a great servant, but a horrible master. Right? So use it for what it is. It's a tool. It's good for communication and stuff, but it should not be your life.
Yeah.
And I think too many people get wrapped up in that, and then they believe whatever they see on their little magic black screens that pop up.
And there seems to be, and again, not to get all like, whatever, this right exposure Mike could be like, all right, but like get all woo with it or whatever. But right. I truly believe in this connecting with Earth and whatever it is. I'm not saying I understand it, but the idea of consciousness, going out and grounding with Earth, whether it be your feet or just being in nature. And it's so
how about
funny.
Structures like the pyramid?
What greater
way, right? What greater way? Not only just seeing them, but actually creating a physical manifestation of something so large and heavy that it's not only from the earth, it's connected right back to the earth. There's something there, right? I mean, it's and we see this all over the place. I'm just like looking at my notes, what I wanted to talk to you guys about, and we're all over the place. But
Sorry.
Like Peru. No, it's fine, but it's like Peru, South America, those megalithic structures down there where people were supposedly carrying rocks from one quarry at the top of a mountain down through a valley and up 10,000 feet to another place where then they put the rocks. The rocks were not good enough on that mountain across the valley over there. They had to dig them up, tons of blocks, and somehow transport them down a mountain and then back up because they wanted the terrace over here instead of over there. It makes, no, come on. The perfect 90-degree angle cuts of those H blocks and come on, Yeah.
What were you going to say, Mike? I'm sorry.
Well, I said, because why not?
Oh, because why not? Okay.
If you're working with Stone Age tools, why would you not want to take a bunch of rocks from one mountain and carry it down into a valley and up another mountain. I mean, that makes sense to me.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
God.
burning all those extra, maybe that's what it was. It was the
Exactly.
new workout
Workout.
weight loss.
You probably charge people
Plan.
subscriptions every month.
Right.
For it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's where it gets weird too, where I again feeling like that there was a hand in our, you want to call it the gatekeepers, aliens, whatever you might want to call it. It feels like there was something here at least helping or had helped at certain points. And then, you know, you look what the Mayans did and how they would just like, I can't remember the name of the temple, but they sacrificed in 3 days like 100,000 people at this place. I cannot remember for the life of me the name of it.
Yeah.
But it was all in the name of this god that they were worshiping. And it always makes me wonder, like, because Johanna James, I think she brought this up when she was on with you guys. She said, think about it. Nowadays, if there was a cataclysmic event, you or I or any of us, just with a basic, understanding of science, numbers, and a couple other things, if we went somewhere into some island where they're just running the old school of way of living off the land, we would appear as gods to them because we showed up on a boat or we showed up on a craft and we had this advanced knowledge because we knew how to make a number. And also math is like magic until you understand it. I mean, it helps you predict the future. So you would appear as a god, and then this legend would be passed down through time about the great Wayne that showed up on a boat, and then they're sacrificing people because the god Wayne will be mad if, and it's like every once in a while that stuff makes sense to me. I'm like, yeah, I could see how, because we as people love telling stories.
Well, if the great Wayne shows up at one of these islands, I will tell you, I will not be carrying no handbag.
No.
Right? Because isn't that what Graham Hancock says all the time? If you look at the statues in Göbekli Tepe and you look at the ones like, in Central America, you always see that. And he says they're a handbag and they're probably carrying tools or something. No, I'm going to have a backpack. Come on, man.
That's right. Then they'll just say it was a jetpack. You were flying around the world.
Right. That's right.
That's so weird. Oh, man.
Yeah, that's right. So, all right. Oh, I wanted to ask you guys, what were your thoughts on that UFO report when it finally came out in June?
Well, I'll let Micah go first. Mike, I don't know. Do you remember too much?
It
was 9 pages.
Didn't read it.
Oh, okay.
I would say I have two feelings on it. One was I 100% did rip on it a little bit, and everybody and their brother and their sisters, mothers, cousins covered it. Yep. So I didn't cover it a lot. I did like a brief little thing. Matter of fact, I think 2 episodes back for us, I did like a brief 10-minute thing. I was first learning how to do some stuff, some software, and I hopped on. I was just talking until a guest came on. But I will say this was the preliminary report. They purposely released this to Congress while they were on recess, or it was the day of them going to recess. So they didn't come back till just a couple weeks ago here, right?
Yep.
So this was the preliminary report. I believe it might have been 9 or 16 pages or whatever it was. There is rumors that there was an actual 480 something page document that is the full length story behind all of this, as well as I believe 22 different videos that were shown to select cabinet members that said that, listen, this was everything we've ever seen in sci-fi and more. And that may be the case. I do think that it is what it is. It is the preliminary report. I think it, on its face value, even though it was rather disappointing to those that are experiencing, actual experiencers, people that we know that have, say maybe someone like Terry Lovelace, who's had this experience and said, I've dealt with this being and I'm still dealing with these things. Rather disappointing, right? Because he's dealing with a lot more. But for your everyday person who's just not really into this stuff, that was kind of like the first major statement the United States had made on it since 1969.
Yeah.
When the UFO disclosure cover-up thing happened here in Michigan. So in a sense, that was historic no matter what. I do think that what I am worried about a little bit, and this is what I love that Ben and Joe do, is that they bring on people that are experiencers, people you won't even know of, right? They get some big name guests too. They had Lou Elizondo on and stuff, but you have people that are every day, no less than Lou or no less than the big names out there that are experiencing this stuff. And I believe that as a collective consciousness, the answers seem to lay there. We're all these little pieces of the puzzle. And I am a little concerned with how mainstream it's coming. I know it sounds so bad to say because we all wanted that, but there's this weird part to me that's like,
careful what you wish for.
Yeah, something's off with it.
Something
I
is
feel
off,
like they're striving for the control. I just feel like our government has never let, Michael, what do you always say? Never let a good
Good crisis go to waste.
Yeah, never let a good
Exactly.
crisis go to waste.
I'm not saying this is a crisis, but the word threat is definitely being pushed here a lot. And it could be that. We don't know.
Well, it's definitely an issue of national security. Don't get me wrong on that. I don't think they're coming down to hug us, or if they're coming down, or what. We don't know. If I don't know what your purpose is, I don't trust you. I'm sorry. It just, I got to know, what are you doing here, and why are you possibly in the way of air traffic and stuff. But you bring up a great point about the Congress going back into session, and it was very quietly released. But I don't know, Michael, you might know about this, that there was it was Marco Rubio and on the Republican side, and there was a Democrat in the same committee about the NDA, how they have made an amendment to the NDA that says that the government will the military will absolutely now start investigating UFOs, UAPs. And they're funding. There's an amendment to it, and it might be something that you guys can look up and talk about later. But yeah, they put that through, and now it's a part of the National Defense Act, right? So they whatever they saw in that report when they went to on break or whatever, and now they come back. That was one of the first things that they amended to the NDA. And I thought that was very fascinating, very telling, and very quiet.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the weird part. Building up to this, man, it was like on the news. Everybody was talking about this, all this talking, all this chatter, and then it just died.
Yeah.
I think Jimmy Church even talked about, when I had that conversation with him, he goes, who pulled the plug, right? Everybody was talking, and then somebody flipped that switch and said, all right, make it the next thing. We got to get to something else here. Yeah. And that's very strange. I don't know. Something seems off.
Well, and I just wonder, conspiratorial mind going now. I just wonder if it has something to do with now the let's play people against each other about this coof and who got the poke and who didn't. Mm-hmm. Right. So we can at least not talk about this stuff anymore. Let's keep people mad and arguing over, things, and we can go, like, for instance, that whole thing about that amendment to the NDA. Not many people know that was passed and now amended, that the U.S. military absolutely has to continue and are being funded now to investigate this phenomenon. So something triggered that. And I think it's exactly what you said. So.
All right. I don't mean to be that guy, but I do have to get off here because I got to get ready to go to work very soon.
No problem. All right.
But I appreciate you having us on.
Oh, it's been awesome, guys. And
I was going to say, we appreciate you guys coming on.
Yeah, it's definitely going to have to be a part 2 type of situation
for sure. Yeah.
And we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah. No, and the great thing about this is the great thing about the technology when it's used right, is that we get people together, we start brainstorming, we start sharing these ideas, and
absolutely,
I think there is something to that. Call it what you will, channeling collective consciousness. I don't know. I think when we start asking the questions and we start seeking, the answers present themselves. So I that's what I love about the podcast community.
Well, before I let you guys go, anything coming up in the future that you want to let people know about? Anything you got lined up?
Well, for our show, for us, what we cover weekly, it can vary a little bit. Like right now, we're covering the Oklahoma bombing, Timothy McVeigh. That was something that we've covered some stuff like Ruby Ridge and went down at Waco, and just the ins and outs of some of the history and how that's affected us as a whole. And then we always try to mix in, crazy cases like with the Stephen Kubacki, how he just went missing, and just cover some of that. And then for myself, I'm helping out the UFO Garage guys on Saturday nights. I'll be over there at 9 p.m. Eastern Central Time.
Awesome.
Hanging out with people. I got Alien Girl 111 next weekend here, or the Saturday, I should say. And we'll bring in quite a few people that way, just to hang out with them and get their understanding. Actual reporters that have been trying to get into this for years. The one after her, the Rogie report, I'm excited for her take on the the 180 disclosure, because that's something she actually does. She's a bona fide like reporter that's been trying to research this for years. So it's really intriguing to get their take. As much as I give mainstream media crap, I still want to sit down and talk with them and get their point of view on it, you know?
Yep. Okay. And I guess for us, we could, since this is a swap cast, we should talk about what we got coming up. So next week we got the one and only Richard Serrett from the Conspiracy Show from Toronto, Canada, coming on. I'm super excited about that because after I found his show like last year-ish time frame, absolutely love the show. It's a great show. He covers everything, UFOs, conspiracies, you name it. And I just love going down that rabbit hole. And then we got confirmed coming up in a couple weeks, we're going to have Christina Gomez on. So she's going to come on our show, and that's going to be awesome. And then in November, for right now, we've got Mr. Sullivan, who talks about paranormal in the cinema. So different things.
Michelle's
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the little
So
subliminal messages,
the symbology of the occult in cinema. So that's going to be freaking awesome.
Well, there's so much in Disney alone that could be.
Yeah.
100%.
Yep. So that's what we got going on. So, all right, guys, I know we're keeping you guys for a while and Micah's got to go. But
no worries.
We absolutely loved having you guys come on. We got to get you guys back on here and have more of a chat. But I guess this is where we're going to say thanks a lot, guys. And we'll talk to you soon.
See you. All right. You guys have a great night.
Have a good one.
All right, Michelle, we got to get them back on. We need a part 2.
Yeah, part 2, we're talking Bigfoot next time. Dogman.
How about that Michigan Stonehenge? We got to dig into that. That's awesome. And I remember seeing an article mentioned about that not too long ago, and I was starting to dig into it and the whole Michigan Triangle. It's just kind of hard to find anybody who's a expert on those kind of things, but we'll find somebody.
Well, and it's one thing flying over Lake Michigan and being able to see the ship ruins, but the Stonehenge looking, figures in that picture.
Yeah, that's obviously
that was cool.
That is an obviously man-made standing stone structure about 12 meters under Lake Michigan.
It's Michigan's Atlantis.
Well, maybe.
Yeah,
Who
in a
knows?
sense, we don't know.
But anyways, hey, you know who might know something about that?
Who?
Randall Carlson. So Randall, we need you to come on. And
we are calling out to you, Randall.
come on, Mr. Carlson. Let's get you on here and let's talk because, man, we've got a lot to talk about.
Pressure's on.
All right, everybody. I think we're going to just about wrap this up. It's been a long week. It's been quite a long podcast, and we hope you enjoyed it.
So have a great night.
And remember, everybody, keep your eyes to the sky.
You have been listening to the Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast. You can reach us at mi.ufo.podcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter at mi_UFO and join our Facebook group by searching for Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters. So until next time.